What happens when a decorated admiral reaches for a soldier's weapon? And she snaps his hand away? In the middle of the desert, under a burning sun, one officer stood against rank, proving that true leadership is not about stars on a uniform, but about responsibility, courage, and respect. The desert stretched in all directions, a sea of cracked earth and rising heat. The horizon shimmered, blurred by the relentless sun. In the distance, a helicopter roared, its blades tearing the stillness of the morning. Dust rose in great waves, covering boots, tanks, and rifles with a film of grit. Soldiers at the remote base shifted in their positions. Some adjusted their helmets. Others tightened their grip on rifles. A visitor was arriving, not just any visitor, but a man whose reputation carried weight in every military circle, Admiral Jonathan Reeves. He was a name spoken with both respect and unease, known for harsh inspections, sharp words, and an unshakable belief that discipline was more powerful than any weapon. His arrival was rarely casual. It was always a test. Among the soldiers was Captain Laura Bennett. She stood near the mounted heavy gun, her eyes shielded beneath the visor of her cap. She was calm, her back straight, her presence steady. Unlike many others, she did not fidget. She had faced firefights, long deployments, and missions where hesitation meant death. Her weapon, a mounted heavy-caliber machine gun, gleamed in the sun. To the untrained eye, it was just steel and bolts. To her, it was life itself. Every screw, every lever, every sight adjustment had been checked by her hands. She carried the weapon not as a tool, but as a responsibility. The helicopter landed with a thud. Dust swirled higher, burning the eyes of the soldiers who stood at attention. Reeves stepped out. Tall, composed, his boots polished to a mirror shine. His gaze swept across the base, sharp as a blade. Bennett's hand stayed on her weapon. Her fingers brushed against the cool steel, ready, steady, unshaken. The Admiral's steps were deliberate. He walked toward the heavy gun, his expression unreadable. Soldiers tracked his movement, curious, nervous. "Captain Bennett," he called out, his voice carrying across the desert air. "Yes, Admiral," she replied, her tone crisp. "I've heard your unit is performing well," he said. His words were not quite praise. They were a test in themselves. Bennett offered no smile. "We train to be ready at all times, sir." His eyes drifted to the weapon. The sunlight glared off its barrel. Reeves paused, then extended a hand almost casually toward the mounted gun. In that instant, Bennett's hand moved faster than most could follow. She blocked his motion, her grip strong and deliberate. "Hands off, sir." Her voice was firm but calm, not disrespectful but absolute. The soldiers nearby froze. The desert itself seemed to fall silent. Reeves blinked in surprise, his hand still caught in hers. Then, slowly, he smiled, though his eyes revealed curiosity more than amusement. "You've got steel in you," he said quietly. "And you need to respect it," Bennett replied. Her hand released his, but her gaze did not waver. The tension lingered in the air. Soldiers exchanged quick glances but dared not move. Reeves studied her, then stepped back half a pace. "I only wish to see the equipment, and you may observe," Bennett said evenly. "But no one touches this weapon without my permission. Not even you." The Admiral tilted his head, intrigued. Few had ever spoken to him that way. "You speak as if the weapon belongs to you," he said. "It belongs to this unit," Bennett replied, "and it belongs to the lives it protects. My role is to safeguard it. My authority is not personal. It is responsibility." The soldiers around them shifted. Some nodded almost imperceptibly. They had heard lectures before. But this was not a lecture. This was lived truth, spoken with clarity. For the first time in a long career, Reeves felt the weight of being challenged, not by defiance, but by competence. The desert was never gentle. Heat pressed down on the soldiers as Bennett led her team into live fire drills. Targets rose from the sand, swinging and shifting unpredictably. "Positions," Bennett commanded. Her voice was sharp but steady. The soldiers moved, their steps practiced, their rifles ready. She manned the heavy gun. The crew loaded ammunition with precision. Dust swirled again as the first target appeared. Left target moving. "Fire!" the gun roared. The sound was deafening, echoing off distant ridges. Sand exploded around the target, then it fell. Soldiers adjusted positions, responding to her hand signals, their movements smooth and coordinated. Reeves watched closely, his arms folded. He had seen drills countless times, but something about this one was different. The soldiers did not simply follow orders. They trusted them. Every motion of Bennett's hand, every tone in her command carried absolute certainty. He stepped closer, careful now not to interfere. He wanted to see to understand what gave her this authority. Hours passed. The desert heat grew harsher. Sweat-stung eyes, dust-coated throats. Yet Bennett did not falter. She guided her unit through each sequence, correcting errors, pushing them, reminding them. At one point, a soldier hesitated, misjudging the wind on a distant shot. Bennett's correction came instantly, her tone calm. Adjust 2 degrees. Fire again, the shot hit. The soldier nodded, relief flashing across his face. Reeves absorbed it all silently. He realized that this woman's authority did not come from stars on her shoulders. It came from skill, vigilance, and an unwavering demand for accountability. When the final round was fired and the desert fell silent, Bennett stepped back. She scanned the horizon, then turned to her unit. Well done. Now check every weapon. Safety first. Precision always. The soldiers moved to comply. Each one focused, each one aware that every detail mattered. Reeves approached slowly. He stopped a few feet away. His expression was thoughtful, the weight of realization clear in his eyes. "Captain Bennett," he said at last, "you've given me a lesson today." She inclined her head slightly. "We all learn, Admiral. Even in the desert." "You've reminded me," he continued, "that rank is meaningless without competence. Authority is hollow without accountability. And respect must always be earned." Her gaze held his. "Yes, sir. That is the only way soldiers survive. That is the only way missions succeed." The desert wind shifted, carrying dust across their boots. The soldiers nearby listened quietly, understanding they were witnessing something rare. Reeves, a man who had commanded fleets and written policies, was learning a truth that the desert had etched into every grain of sand. Authority must be proven, responsibility must be embraced, and leadership is not in titles, but in action. Closing reflection that day, the story of Captain Laura Bennett spread across the base. Soldiers spoke of the moment she snapped an admiral's hand away from her weapon. They spoke of how she stood unshaken under his gaze, how she taught even him what true command meant. But Bennett herself did not seek such talk. For her there was no glory in it, only responsibility. The desert was vast, endless, and unforgiving. And so was the burden of leadership. Every day, every drill, every decision, lives depended on her vigilance. She rested her hand once more on the weapon. It was not steel that gave her strength. It was clarity. In the desert, under the harsh sun, she knew one thing with certainty. Leadership was not given. It was earned. The desert had many faces. Sometimes it was calm, stretching endless and silent. Other times it turned wild, as if determined to remind humans of their smallness. That afternoon, as the soldiers prepared for a second round of training, the horizon darkened. A storm was coming. Fine sand rose in swirls, carried by a hot wind. The sky, once blazing blue, became hazy and copper-colored. The temperature dropped slightly, but the air thickened. "Sandstorm inbound," a watchman called from the observation tower. His voice was sharp, urgent. Bennett's eyes narrowed. She had seen storms like this overseas, in deployments where visibility shrank to nothing, and chaos followed. A sandstorm could blind a unit, choke rifles, and scatter formations. She turned to her team. "Secure gear. Maintain close formation. No one breaks line." Her voice cut through the growing roar of the wind. The Admiral stepped closer, his cap pressed tightly against his head. "Do you continue training in this?" Bennett's gaze was firm. "Yes, sir. Because in real combat, storms do not wait." Reeves nodded slowly. He watched as the soldiers tightened straps, covered barrels, and adjusted goggles. Sand hissed across metal, rattling against helmets. Bennett stood tall, her hand steady on the heavy gun. The storm whipped around her, but her voice rose above it. "This is where discipline matters most. Not when it's easy, but when nothing can be seen, when every step feels uncertain." The storm swallowed the desert. Visibility fell to a few feet. Soldiers moved by instinct and by trust in their commander. Reeves could barely keep his footing, but Bennett's commands never wavered. Her voice was their anchor. In the chaos of sand and wind, the soldiers followed her every word. And the Admiral, shielding his eyes, realized again why respect for her was absolute. By evening, the storm had passed. The desert was quiet once more. though the air still carried a faint taste of grit. The sun dropped low, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. The drills had ended, but Bennett did not rest. She checked weapons, inspected positions, and walked through the camp. Her vigilance never paused. The Admiral found her standing at the edge of the base, watching the horizon. The desert night was creeping in, cold and vast.